Good afternoon, Cedarfield family. Thank you for joining us, taking time out of your busy day. We are here to talk about a conversation around the four freedoms. Cedarfield is currently celebrating our 25th anniversary. We're so excited. And there's a group of residents and team members that got together over the summertime and decided to celebrate each month from September through our actual 25th anniversary of September in 2021. And so for November, we wanted to really celebrate the past, the present, and the future of Cedarfield. And Fiona, our creative expression specialist, came up with a theme around doing that, revolving around the four freedoms. The four freedoms were defined by Franklin Roosevelt in his State of the Union address in 1941. And he used them to make a case for America when he was partnering with Britain. In helping Britain, President Roosevelt stated that the United States was using these universal freedoms so that we could unite people across the ocean. The four freedoms are the freedom of speech and expression, the freedom of worship, the freedom of fear, and the freedom of want. For those of you that are living in the main building or in the cottages, when you make your way up to the main building, the four freedoms, a picture of these four freedoms are outside of the mailroom, along with a very detailed description of this art expression. They were painted by Norman Rockwell in a series of these four iconic images that really clearly depict what President Roosevelt was trying to achieve, embodying protection and support of people no matter their distance. The paintings of these four freedoms really, in our opinion as a committee, as we were listening to Fiona, really do act as a bridge between the past, the present, and the future right here at Cedarfield. So we thought it was a great theme to use this month. So with me today is a special guest to help us discuss how those four freedoms really relate to the past, the present, and the future. Chris Henderson is our Chief Executive Officer at Pinnacle Living, uniquely able to really help us identify the past, the present, and the future, because Chris actually was the Executive Director here at Cedarfield for a number of years. Chris began his career at Pinnacle Living, actually at the Hermitage in Northern Virginia in the spring of 1992. He became the administrator of the Hermitage, Northern Virginia in January of 1994, and in 1997 was the executive director right here at Cedarfield. And then a little while later in 2005 became the chief executive officer of Pinnacle Living. Chris is married to his wife, Sarah, and they were married in the fall of 1991. He has two lovely children, Gabrielle and Catherine, affectionately named around the house Gabby and Katie. So he loves spending time with family. If you know Chris well, and even if you don't, when you're having a conversation with him, maybe even for the first time, the conversation will always gravitate to family. So, Chris, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Michael. I'm thrilled to be here today.
So, we have a series of questions. We're going to explore these four freedoms in the past, present, and future of Cedarfield. So, we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thought we'd just start off by talking a little bit about Cedarfield and how Cedarfield came to be, and you were around during those early years.
I was. Going all the way back to our founding, when we were the Methodist home, the original campus being Hermitage Richmond, the vision for then the Methodist home was a home for every United Methodist. And a fellow by the name of Dr. Bernard Via was our founder, and Dr. Via, former United Methodist clergy, has since passed away, but his vision is really what stoked all of our communities to grow. And my predecessor, who served as president of Pinnacle Living, or then Virginia United Methodist Homes, Jerry Fink, had a strong vision for what the future of retirement living really needed to be. We had been a custodial care provider for the first really 50 years of our existence. And Cedarfield was a vision where it was a vision that created community and service and program rather than just care. So Jerry was a real pioneer when it came to that. And you can see that in our early design. I mean, the size of the campus was very different than anything we'd ever had before. The number of apartments we have alone, I think there are 23 or 24 different apartment floor plans, the size of the apartments. And then on the health services side, the fact that we built our healthcare center with all private rooms. We built just about every one of our assisted living apartments as one-bedroom apartments. And our memory support center was really cutting edge at that time as well. Jerry had a vision for the future that was very different than our history and our past. And when I started with Pinnacle Living, then Virginia United Methodist Homes in 1992, I was at our Hermitage Northern Virginia campus, as you said, and there was talk of acquiring land on the far west end of Richmond. And my memory was that it was out in the country, way, way out. You know, there was nothing out this way. And when I became administrator in '94, we actually came out here when before the building construction started. And it was fairly rural. You know, the Blackwoods owned most of the property that is now Cedarfield. And interestingly enough, that's where the name Cedarfield came from. Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood called their home Cedarfield. And it was a beautiful little rancher, kind of sat up where the entrance to the healthcare center is now. And the vision for this land was something that our board and Jerry and those that supported us, it was a true leap of faith. That connection to the United Methodist Church was very important. Jerry did get some criticism because we're building a home for the affluent. Well, everyone needs a place to call home. And Cedarfield became just that on the far west end of Richmond. And it's exciting to see where we are then and where we are and where we've come to today.
That's great. Thank you, Chris. And you were here for a number of years as executive director.
I was, from '97 until about 2005. When I first came to Cedarfield, we were about 55 or 60% occupied. We hit that number very quickly. September of 1996, we brought our first residents in, and there's still some people living here today that moved in at that time. And by the time I came in the spring of '97, about half of our residents had moved in. And I'll never forget my very first meeting with the team leaders. One of the department directors said to me, our biggest challenge is that the residents have had a chance to move in before we did. And I think back on that and think, that wasn't really a challenge. That was forming community. And that's what Cedarfield is all about. It's not the bricks and mortar. Yes, we have a beautiful campus and a beautiful building, and we've done incredible work on the expansion, but it's the people that live here and the people that work here that create that sense of community. So I'll never forget that department director saying that to me, but in all honesty, that's the way it should have been. This is the residents' home, and we're here to serve, and that's the exciting part about who we are and what we do.
That's great. You mentioned Pioneer residents. In September, we had a Pioneer breakfast for the residents and the team members. There are 30 people who both live and work here that have been here since the very beginning.
Just amazing. and that just goes to who we are and what we do and why we do it. I think about some of the people that have lived here and the work that they've done, both professionally and then for Cedarfield in their retirement. It's amazing. And that sense of community and that sense of belonging, I think, is a key driver for everything that we do.
Agreed. So our first freedom of fear and the presence of courage, we wanted just to talk a little bit about first our veterans. Earlier in the month we had a great virtual Veterans Day celebration here in the Fellowship Hall. It was widely received by many. And so just a question of how, over the past several years, we have served our veterans and honored our veterans at Cedar Field over the years.
You know, when I was a child, when someone would ask, who's your hero? It was always a sports legend. You know, I grew up in Pittsburgh, so it was Roberto Clemente, and Terry Bradshaw, and people like that. And it wasn't until I matured and I realized what was happening around me that my vision of a hero changed. And you know, Veterans Day at Cedar Field and all of our Pinnacle Living communities is an amazing day. You meet people, you connect with people, but sometimes you don't really know who they are and what they do. And I think our Veterans Day celebrations are an opportunity for us to really lift up those heroes that we live with and work with every single day and celebrate their life and say thank you. Something that a lot of us sometimes forget to do. But I think we should all be proud of those that have served, those who do serve, and those who continue to serve, and their families. And the Veterans Day celebrations are just amazing in that regard.
We videoed our virtual Veterans Day celebration and posted it on mycedarfield.com. My son actually saw saw the event, and the next day we were at Publix on Staples Mill, and there was a veteran in the supermarket, and my son Roger went up to him and said, I need you to know that Cedar Field honored you and honored every veteran and military person around the world. If you want to see our event, just go on mycedarfield.com and you can see the celebration.
That's great.
So, the other topic we just wanted to explore related to the freedom of fear and the presence of courage has really to do with this global pandemic. And so we've had almost 3 live chats every day with the residents and the team members. And I'm just curious as to what your perspective is on the freedom of fear and courage related to COVID-19.
You know, the world has changed. The best part of my job is that I have the best job in the world. But every great job has an occasional bad day. 2020 has had a lot of bad days for all of us. The way we have changed our delivery of services and our programs just astounds me. I know that it's frustrating for our residents. I know that it's frustrating for our team members, and I have conversations at least 4 times a week with a resident when I hear, when are we going to get back to normal? Well, the frustrating part for me is that I don't think we know what normal is going to be in the future. And I talked about those veteran heroes. And you know, we talk about the heroes that work here at Cedar Field every day as well. We have team members who are making huge sacrifices day in and day out to serve our residents. And are we doing it the same way? No, we're not. And sadly, it's probably going to be a long time before we get back to the awesome team member Christmas party that the residents host every year. And our holiday events and even our town halls are so very different than the way we used to do them. It's great to hear that the vaccine is close. But what we have to remember is it's going to take time for that vaccine to roll out. And there are people who are a whole lot smarter than me saying that we may get back to some semblance of normalcy in the winter of 2021. That's a year away, and that's kind of frightening. But as a community and as a people, we're seeing people overcome and persevere. And the changes that we're making day in and day out and the resiliency of our residents is just incredible. So another group of heroes are those that are serving and those who are surviving through this pandemic.
Very true. Thank you, Chris. And again, just a thank you to everyone that's watching, residents and team members, families alike. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your cooperation. Thank you for being involved in our evolving preparedness plan. I'm just, when I sit back and reflect, I'm just in awe of how our current plan and our evolving plan since March has always been collaborative, seeking guidance from not just the Virginia Department of Health and our other agencies, but really involving the residents and asking them how far we should go with certain things. So thank you to everyone that's watching. We really appreciate everything that you're doing. We truly are all in this together.
Absolutely.
The second freedom is the freedom of worship, for every person to worship God or their denomination in his or her own way, the strength to live out our own particular faith and seek guidance from others with different faiths. And it's one of the foundational values of our organization. We just want to explore a little bit about the history of Virginia United Methodist Homes and our connection to the Methodist Church.
Certainly. Well, I said just a little while ago, we were founded in 1948 by United Methodist clergyman Dr. Bernard Via. Dr. Via's son actually still lives in Roanoke, and he is a great guy. He is also retired United Methodist clergy. And Bernard tells stories of coming home from college when his parents actually lived at the Hermitage. And they were the 24-hour caregivers for our first residents in 1947 and 48 at the Hermitage. And he tells stories I'll never forget him telling the story that he came home on Christmas break, and Dr. Via had been sitting up at night with a resident who was not well. And his mom said, "Would you mind sitting with this resident tonight so your dad can get some sleep?" That sacrifice is just amazing. And when we think back to our first inkling of what aging services was in 1948 and where we are today and what's happening, it's mind-boggling. It truly is. Our connection to the United Methodist Church, quite honestly, is stronger than it's been in a very, very long time. I mentioned that Dr. Via had a vision of a home for every then Methodist. We've realized that we can't be a home for every United Methodist, but our goal as an organization is to be the aging services resource for every United Methodist in the Virginia Conference. And our team works hard to do that day in and day out. When I came into the position I served in now in 2005, more than half of the residents we serve were United Methodist. In fact, my predecessor, Jerry Fink, was the senior pastor at Reveille United Methodist Church before he became a district superintendent. And a lot of our first residents here, our first pioneers, came from Reveille and Trinity churches. And that evolution and that change in demographics, if you will, has really been exciting to see. I grew up in the United Methodist Church. The church that I grew up in, unfortunately, like many older United Methodist churches, is struggling to keep the doors open back in southwestern Pennsylvania. And when we go back and visit my parents, we visit that church. And I remember as a child there being a lot of gray hair in that church. And now it's fewer and fewer people every time we go back. And that church family is so important. I tell my clergy friends that I do not understand the call to serve ministry. I truly don't. But I think our team members understand a call to serve older adults. And we know for certain that everyone who works for Pinnacle Living could work someplace else, but they choose to work here for a reason. And it's the people, and it's the culture, and it's the opportunity to serve those that we come to love in so many different ways.
Very true. It might be good for folks to hear a little bit about Martha Stokes' position.
Certainly, yeah.
That always just, for me, when you talk about a management of an organization and a dedicated full-time employee at the Pinnacle Living office speaks volumes to our commitment.
So we have had, for many, many years, all the way back into the 90s, we had typically a clergy person who was near the end of their retirement, at the end of their professional career, who would serve as the director of church and community relations. Some of our original residents will remember a fellow by the name of Henry Matthews. Dr. Matthews was United Methodist clergy, and he was in that position when I came to Pinnacle Living in 1992.
Okay.
And Dr. Matthews was followed by Dr. Morgan, and Lewis was a great guy, and he was that church connection. After Lewis retired, we brought a fellow in by the name of Jim McClung, and Jim served as our director of church and community relations for a number of years until, sadly, Jim passed away after a short time with us. And after Jim's departure, I met with the bishop and our conference bishop, who is very engaged and is very supportive of our mission and our ministry, and the gentleman by the name of Mark, who was our director of connectional ministries, and talked about the fact that I felt as though we needed to make a change in who we recruited for that job. Again, the vision was to become that United Methodist Aging Services resource for our conference. So we went for about 2 years without having that connectional piece within the organization, because after talking with the director of Connectional Ministries and some other folks, it became apparent that we needed to find a different person to serve in that role. So after about 2 years, I went back and actually had lunch with the gentleman who was still the director of Connectional Ministries and said, okay, I've written a job description. I don't think we want retired clergy or clergy. I think we want someone who has an understanding of adult education and our conference. Who can I talk to? And Mark said, you should talk to Martha because she knows a lot of people in the conference. I'm like, that's a great idea. And Martha and I actually went to church together when Sarah and the girls and I moved to Richmond in '97. We moved our membership to Shady Grove Short Pump, and Martha and Steve were there. So I knew Martha in that regard, but really didn't know who she was or what she did. And so I reached out to Martha and said, listen, this is the position we're looking to fill. And she said, oh, that's exciting. Let me think about it, and I'll get some names to you. Never, ever, ever thinking that Martha would fill that role. But Martha's connection to our conference, she's actually, as of Halloween, when we had our virtual annual conference for the Virginia Conference of the Methodist Church, Martha was elected as our conference lay leader. She's well respected and appreciated throughout the conference. Martha has a master's degree in adult education, if I remember correctly. And she is such a gifted speaker and educator, but she's also a gifted networker. And when Martha and I sat down for the first time and really talked about that aging services resource piece, it resonated with her. And she has embraced that and run with it. And because of Martha and the work that she's done, both for Pinnacle Living and for the Alzheimer's Association, I think our connection to the church is stronger today than it's ever been. Our churches are struggling. We know that. Many churches are struggling to pay the light bills. So the planned giving piece and the Samaritan support has dropped a bit over the years because of the financial struggles that many churches are having. But I'm proud of the fact that Martha has done such great work in being that resource to our conference. And that full-time position is something that I value, something our board fully supports, and it really helps us connect and maintain that connection with United Methodist Church.
That's great. Speaking of freedom of worship, one of the things I love about my job over the last 23 years in working in a not-for-profit community is probably fair to say most not-for-profits across the country have a clergy working at the community or a department or a team. Cedarfield is very fortunate to have the pastoral services team that we have here, with Florence leading the team with Trish and Margaret. And so I was just interested in your perspective about what we're doing here and how that has evolved over the last couple of years.
That's a great question, Michael. And as I think back, when we thought of chaplaincy worship service on Sundays, some type of Bible study or connection throughout the week, and a lot of pastoral care support, particularly at the end of life. And as we have evolved as an organization, and I think as we've evolved as a culture and as a people, religion is becoming, spirituality is becoming more and more important to so many people. And to see what the team here is doing in terms of connection and outreach, it's so much more than it used to be. And if you think about what happens here day in and day out, that pastoral care component, that connection, is still of the utmost importance. But the opportunities for us to engage beyond that, to learn more about who we are, what we do, and how we do it is just amazing. And the fact that fewer than half of our residents today are United Methodist has really changed the way we do things as well. Florence happens to be United Methodist clergy. That's awesome. We have chaplains in other communities, other Pinnacle Living communities that don't happen to be United Methodist, and they're doing great work too. It's that spiritual connection that's so very, very important, both for our residents and for our team members. The opportunity to grow, the opportunity to engage, the opportunity to connect and provide that aging services resource through our worship, our praise, and our spiritual programming is so important. And I'm excited about where we're going and what we're doing here. The fact that we want to grow our spiritual life program here, and it's going to be second to none. I think it probably already is, quite candidly. But if you look at your monthly calendar on the My Cedarfield app, it's amazing to see how those connections are being built and interwoven into everything we do in the community. And that's exciting.
Very true. Thank you, Chris. One tidbit stemming from pastoral services, and when we're thinking about our monthly celebrations, celebrating our 25th anniversary, Florence and Margaret and Trish were at the helm of a booklet that they have been putting together for several years, and this year is no different, a Christmas memory booklet. And this year they wanted to tie in the traditions and some of the legacy and the stories of the past at Cedarfield. That booklet is being printed this week and will be widely distributed, I believe, the early part of next week. And I just wanted to publicly thank Florence and Trish and Margaret for really putting 8 months, that's right, 8 months of work into this booklet to make it the best that it can be. So thank you, ladies. And I hope everyone, residents, team members, and families, many of our prospects will be, our future residents will be receiving this book. So I hope you all take the time to read the stories. I've read the booklet twice now, and it just gives us a great perspective of really some of the people that lived and worked here, and currently that live and work here, and many of their own traditions and their own families, but also some of the many traditions right here at Cedarfield. So, our next freedom happens to be the freedom of speech and expression. We wanted to really talk about 4 topics here. Maybe first the strategic framework, maybe, as a freedom of speech and expression. About 5-6 years ago, the board, it's about
17. So we're coming up on our 5th year.
So the board of directors was at one of their annual meetings talking with Chris and wanted to come up with a different framework, a mission, vision, and values. And Chris was at the helm here, leading our organization to guide that discussion. And
so I talked a little bit about Dr. Vian being that paternalistic caregiver, and that's who Virginia United Methodist Homes was for so many years. But as we've evolved, as we've learned, and as we've engaged, we've realized realized that we have to change the way we do business. You're a nursing home administrator, I'm a nursing home administrator. I feel very fortunate, I think the residents feel very fortunate that I've actually never hung my license on the wall anywhere, because I don't think it would go very well. But healthcare is an important piece of what we do, but it's not everything that we do. And our old mission statement was to provide facilities, services, and programs to enhance the quality of life for older persons.
You might be the only one that actually knows that mission
I
statement.
may be. And it was just so bland and not really descriptive at all. And our board charged us to really talk with our team members and talk with our residents and talk about who we are, but more importantly, who we want to be. And that's where Pinnacle Living really came from. We are not yet at the pinnacle. It's an aspirational name. It's something that we want to strive to achieve. We want to continue to grow, and we want to get to that summit, but we're not there yet. So as we talked about a new mission, vision, and value statement, the mission statement actually came together pretty quickly. We wanted something that would reflect who we are and what we do, but more importantly, we wanted it to be simple enough for people to remember. And that mission of Enriching Life's Journey is just that. We don't talk about Enriching Life's Journey for a specific group of people. It's not for our residents, it's not for our team members. It's for everyone. It's for everyone that we touch and everyone that we reach out to. So I'm proud of the work that we've done in that regard. Enriching Life's Journey, again, is an aspirational thought process. We have an enriched life's journey. We're continuously doing it every day. And we're working in partnership with our residents to do that as well. From a vision standpoint, that one was a little tougher. And you know, depending on which management book you read, you know, the mission statement should be introspective, an expression of your organization, and the vision statement should be an introspective thought. And we really struggled with where we wanted to go and what we wanted to do. And we kept coming back to this issue of ageism. We talk about sexism, we talk about racism, all of which is frustratingly rampant within our world today. But we very rarely talk about ageism. And so when we started talking about that challenge of respecting the person, our vision statement came together pretty quickly, and that's a culture in which age does not define the person. I will tell you that as I think about the people that have been here and who are here, age does not define who we are. My paternal grandfather retired at 65 and gave up and was dead within a year. I realized pretty early in my life that that's not the way I wanted to live my life. And my exposure to those that we serve today has really helped me to understand that there's so much more beyond age 65 or 75 or 85, and now beyond the age of 100. And so our culture, our vision of not focusing on the age is an important piece. And then the values, we struggled with that one an awful lot, and I think you were part of that conversation, Mike.
I was.
You know, we landed on 6 key words: culture, stewardship, partnership, transparency, diversity, and hospitality, and quality. I just quality. I apologize. Those are more than just words. We've aligned our evaluation tool for our team members to focus on those 6 key components. We're developing interview guides and support mechanisms for our team members, focusing on those values that are so important to us. And if you think about everything that we do and everything that we want to do, those 6 key words are so very important to the day in and day out. And then of course from there we've developed strategic goals, and each community has developed objectives and action steps associated with that.
Very true. Speaking of our value of diversity, if residents don't know this little tidbit, back in September of 2018, Barbara Fiske and the late Pete Davis, who passed away this February, helped us launch a diversity and inclusion action team. And over the last 2 years, they have just done, with Barbara's guidance and leadership, have just really made a significant contribution here at Cedarfield. From those seedlings of a discussion with Barbara and Pete Davis, they launched into an action team that developed 3 work groups. And so I thought we just talk a little bit about those 3 work groups and then some of the diversity inclusion that we're doing at the Pinnacle Living office.
Certainly. You know, when we talk about diversity today, I think some of us are a little bit fearful of that word. Some of us are fearful to engage in conversation. Some of us are afraid to talk to people about differences. And some of us, quite honestly, aren't ready to embrace the change that needs to happen. And that's hard. And for our residents to step forward and say, we want to be at the forefront of this, speaks volumes. It takes education. It takes intentional listening. I will tell you that earlier this summer, in the early days of the Black Lives Matter movement, one of our minority employees called me and said, "Chris, why aren't you speaking up?" And that kept me up for several nights. Quite honestly, it did. And the answer that I got back to after really struggling with it was, I can't speak up because I haven't lived it. And I need to listen and learn. As Michael said, family is very important. And Sarah and I were fortunate enough that we had a young man come into our lives a few years ago who we ended up becoming foster parents for. And I didn't see life, or I see life differently today because of him. Racism is here. Racism is something that we need to discuss. Racism is something that we need to work through and embrace and work to eradicate from our world. Just like sexism, just like homophobia and everything else. When the young man who is now our son first came to live with us, we were sitting at a restaurant on the West End, and there was a family looking at us because there were 2 white people and a black person sitting at a table. And he said to me, "Should I go up there and talk with them?" At 15. And I said, "No." That was really the first time I saw it in person. And I will tell you that he's now 19 and living on his own and doing quite well. But I am still fearful for him and what we face in our world today. So for our residents to develop educational programs, to partner with groups who help others understand this need and to create opportunities for outreach is phenomenal. And we've got so much more to do as an organization. Pinnacle Living has spent a lot of time listening. We are engaging partners to help us have better conversations in all of our communities. And we've got a lot of learning to do as an organization, as an employer, and as a friend. And that's something that, as an organization, we've committed to strongly and something that we're going to live through and live out in the days and weeks to come.
That's great. Thank you, Chris. One more topic with the freedom of speech and expression. One of the things that I just value here at this community, Cedarfield, is the resident engagement. I've been working in and around this position for 23 years, and I have to say, over the last 4 years working at Cedarfield, the involvement with the resident, the engagement with the resident is unlike none I've ever worked with. And so I just thought it'd be good to just explore a little bit about what you were here for a number of years.
I think things have changed. You know, I look back to my first spring year. I came in March-ish of '97, and the Residents Association was just then being formed. And Nate Bushnell, many people remember Nate and Marnie. Nate was one of the original authors of our Resident Association bylaws, much of which is still in place today.
It is.
Nate was also our first council president. Interesting thing about Nate is he's a former hospital administrator, and it just so happens he was the CEO of Westminster Canterbury Richmond, but chose to come to Cedarfield in his retirement years. And Nate was one of those mentors that knew what he knew, but was also not afraid to admit what he didn't know. And as an organization, I think that mindset has carried us forward. Many, many years ago in that paternalistic world, the mindset in retirement living was, you're retired, let us take care of you. But that's not who we are today, and that's not who we serve today, more importantly. As we started talking about the future of Cedarfield before you came with us, Michael, when Nancy Breckelsbauer was our executive director, I was really struggling with how we can bring multiple voices to the table and really listen to everyone and try to gain consensus. So we took a real leap of faith. And some folks here will remember a fellow by the name of Steve Shields, who did some facilitating for us right here in the fellowship hall. And we had about 60 people, residents, team members, board members, a couple of community folks, a couple of bankers actually, and some finance folks. And we sat down and we started talking about the future of Cedarfield. And I think that helped us grow as an organization more than anything else we've ever done. We've done similar work at Windsor Mead. We're about to embark in Northern Virginia on a very similar process. At Windsor Mead, we landed in a very different place than we had at Cedarfield. Northern Virginia, we're going to land in a very different place too. But I remember standing in this room and talking about the future, and that wellness piece being such an important part of who we are and what we wanted to do. I will never ever forget the day when we decided as a group, we need to build a wellness center. Great.
Where are we going to put it?
Where are we going to put it? Exactly. Where are we going to put a wellness center? Because we started talking about the dimensions of wellness here. This building was going to be 500,000 square feet. You know, how can we compress it and make it something that is manageable and something that's cost effective, but also bring value to the organization. And I remember standing right about here and saying to the group, where would we put this building as we're talking about the building? And I can't remember who it was, but they pointed out the windows to our right and said, right out there. And my heart stopped. I remember feeling my heart just go, and thinking, how in the world are we going to sell that? But it was the process that brought us to that point that sold it. And that engagement piece changed the way we do business day in and day out. We've always had an open door policy. The best part of my job, and I'm sure yours, is engaging with residents and team members. But an open door policy and engagement are two very different things. And we've learned that as an organization. It's easy to say, come talk to me if you want to talk. But communication is a two-way street. And to be able to sit down with a resident, a group of residents, a group of team members and residents and say, what's next? And then being respectful of one another and lifting up one another and being able to say to one another, that's a really bad idea, is important. And I think that work that we did here, that we are pushing through to get done now, is going to just set the standard for who Cedarfield and Pinnacle Living will be in the future. And that's exciting work.
That is exciting. Speaking of that, Chris, let's migrate to our last freedom, freedom of want. And as we were talking about this specific freedom in our master plan and how that has unfolded here in the last 3 years, just curious as to how you think things are going with that master plan and executing what we said we were going to do with the residents almost 5 years ago.
Well, I think we can all agree that we're ready for it to be done. It's taken longer than we expected it to, which is frustrating for all of us. We probably set the expectations too high in that regard. And many people will remember the conversation of let's start in dining. And we started purposely in our dining program because we knew that the wellness building and the apartment building and the healthcare building would create stressors for folks. And we wanted to do something to give back to the residents immediately. And it made the most sense with the work group to start in dining in that, for that very reason. And I look at the dining program and the venues that we have that we are dying to reopen and think that was the right thing to do. There were a lot of challenges from a timing standpoint with closing the pool and the fitness center. But our residents were resilient, and those that wanted to remain engaged in that regard helped us work through and figure out how to make that happen. Today we have a beautiful wellness building. Our creative expression spaces, our fitness spaces, our studio spaces are just incredible. And the pool's amazing as well. The apartments created their own challenges. Obstructed, beeps at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and equipment backing up and change of views and that sort of thing. But as we approach the finished product, we see that it's good work. And we see that it's beneficial to the community. And as we look to the future, we know that we're going to have to continue to evolve. We've got, what do we have, 341 apartments now? Does that sound right?
That's true.
Yeah, 341 apartments and 85 cottages. What's that going to look like in 10 years, or 15 years, or 20 years? I don't think you and I know the answer to that. And as a community, we're going to have to sit down again and start talking through that piece. As the world evolves, we keep hearing over and over again, I don't want to live in healthcare. I don't want to live in healthcare. I don't want to live in the nursing home. And we're working hard to change what a nursing home is on the Cedarfield campus, but we're always going to have that stigma of the nursing home. So how are we going to evolve as an organization to address that challenge? Staffing is going to be a big, big challenge for us in the future. There simply aren't as many people in the world to serve our elders.
That is true.
As there were. So how are we going to overcome these staffing challenges? We're going to sit down and we're going to figure it out as a community and as an organization, and we're going to work through it. So is Cedarfield done evolving? No way. We're just at the beginning of that evolutionary process, and that's exciting. And the resident engagement piece, as you pointed out, is so very important to that process. You and I have the luxury of working in one of the greatest environments in the world, but we work here. We don't live here 24 hours a day. And we've got to listen, we've got to evolve, we've got to be active in the process of the evolutionary phases of the community. And there's a lot of work to do in that regard.
A lot of work. Agreed. Well, I think we've explored our 4 freedoms. I think we spent the last 50 minutes here exploring those 4 freedoms. I think Fiona, thank you, and to the action team of residents that Fiona worked with and team members, thank you for offering up this specific venue throughout the month. For those of you that have not had the opportunity to partake with the events that are down in the Atrium Cafe, I would encourage you to take a look down there. It gives a great view of the history of Cedarfield. We're going to video this, our live chat here, and post this again on mycedarfield.com so people can review it here in the days and weeks ahead. So, Chris, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. If anybody has any questions about the discussion here, please feel free to reach out to the administration suite here, or feel free to call Chris at the Pinnacle Living office. And thank you for tuning in today. We appreciate you. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you.